Welcome to Satluj TV News. You're watching the News Hour with Angus Scott. It's Tuesday, the 25th of April. These are the main headlines from around the world. The US brokers a 72-hour ceasefire in Sudan to allow nations to evacuate civilians. India is set to overtake China this week as the world's most populous country. A 7.1 magnitude earthquake strikes Indonesia, the strongest so far this year. The death toll mounts in Kenya as a religious cult demands its members starve themselves to death. And Donald Trump is to face a civil trial in the US over allegations of rape in the 1990s. A US-brokered 72-hour ceasefire between Sudan's warring generals officially came into effect this morning after 10 days of urban combat killed hundreds, wounded thousands and sparked a mass exodus of foreigners. The Sudanese Armed Forces, the SAF, and the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, agreed to the ceasefire following intense negotiations, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in a statement shortly before the truce took effect at midnight local time. Previous bids to pause the conflict failed to take hold, but both sides confirmed they had agreed to the three-day halt. The ceasefire aims to establish humanitarian corridors, allowing citizens and residents to access essential resources, healthcare and safe zones, while also evacuating diplomatic missions, the RSF paramilitary stated. Several countries from around the world have already evacuated many of their citizens, but are now taking advantage of the ceasefire to rescue as many of their remaining nationals as they can. India will overtake China as the world's most populous country in the coming week, hitting almost 1.43 billion people, the United Nations has reported. By the end of this month, India's population is expected to reach just over 1.425 billion people, matching and then surpassing the population of mainland China. India is topping China due to both rapid growth in its own population and a decline in China's after hitting 1.426 billion last year. Primarily due to its strict one-child policy, China is expected to decline steadily to around 1 billion people by the end of this century, whilst India is projected to increase to 1.5 billion by 2050. A 7.1 magnitude earthquake struck islands west of Indonesia's Sumatra a short while ago, forcing them to flee to higher ground before an hours-long tsunami warning was lifted. The strongest quake so far this year, which struck at 3 a.m. local time, had its epicentre in the sea near the Mentawai Islands at a depth of 15.5 kilometres, according to the United States Geological Survey. Although there were several aftershocks, no casualties or severe damage were reported. Indonesia experiences frequent earthquakes due to its position on the Pacific Ring of Fire, an arc of intense seismic activity where tectonic plates collide. In 2004, a 9.1 magnitude quake struck Aceh province on Sumatra Island, causing a tsunami that killed more than 170,000 people across Indonesia. Fears are growing in Kenya that there could be more victims of a mass starvation cult as investigators resume their searches after finding dozens of corpses in mass graves. Police have spent days scouring an area near Malindi after cult leader Paul Mackenzie Mpenge urged his followers to starve to death in order to find God. The death toll of at least 73 is expected to rise as over 200 people are still reported missing. The grim discovery has sent shockwaves through the country, prompting President William Ruto to pledge a crackdown on unacceptable religious movements, amidst fears that the toll is set to climb higher. In Pakistan, the death toll from a series of explosions caused by a fire in a police station munitions cache has risen to 16. The explosions levelled a specialist counter-terrorism station in Kabul town of Swat Valley, in the northwestern region of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which neighbours Afghanistan. SWAT police said a short circuit in a basement storing grenades and other explosives was the cause of the blasts. The dead, including policemen, 5 suspected terrorists being held for interrogation, and 2 children. More than 50 people are being treated in various hospitals for their wounds. Former UN chief Ban Ki-moon has today urged the Myanmar military to halt violence in the conflict-racked country and engage with its opponents to end the bloody crisis. Myanmar has been in turmoil since the military ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi's government in February 2021, sparking fighting across swathes of the country and tanking the economy. Diplomatic efforts to resolve the crisis have stalled, with the junta ignoring international criticism of its brutal crackdown on dissent and refusing to engage with its opponents. Rights groups accuse the junta of massacres, torching villages and using air and artillery strikes to punish communities suspected of harbouring its opponents. And jury selection is scheduled to start Tuesday in a civil trial pitting Donald Trump against a prominent former American columnist who says he raped her in the 1990s. E. Jean Carroll, 79, says Trump sexually assaulted her in a New York department store and then defamed her after she went public with the allegations years later. Trump, who's facing a slew of legal woes that threaten to derail his 2024 run for a second term in the White House, denies the allegations strongly. Carroll, a former columnist for Elle magazine, says she was raped by Trump in the changing room at the luxury Bergdorf Goodman department store on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan in the mid-1990s. Trump firmly denies the allegations. Space exploration has taken several steps forward this week as a Japanese space startup will attempt today to become the first private company to put a lander on the moon. If all goes to plan, iSpace's Hakuto R Mission 1 lander will start its descent towards the lunar surface at around 1540 hours GMT. It will slow its orbit some 100 kilometers above the moon, then adjust its speed and altitude to make a soft landing around 1 hour later. And the United Arab Emirates Hope space probe yesterday revealed Mars's smaller moon, Deimos, in unprecedented detail, shedding new light on the origin of the mysterious lumpy satellite. The probe, the Arab world's first interplanetary mission, has been orbiting Mars for 2 years, regularly flying past Deimos and its big sibling moon, Phobos. The United Arab Emirates is also planning to land an uncrewed rover on the moon next year. And finally, a copy of the first collected edition of William Shakespeare's plays went on display in London on Monday to mark the 400th anniversary of its publication. The public was given the chance to see the first folio held at London's Guildhall Library for 1 day only. The edition, published on November the 8th, 1623, that was 7 years after the playwright's death, is one of the best preserved copies in the world. The first folio contains 36 plays, including 18 that had not been printed before. None of the dramatist's original manuscripts survive from the time that they were originally written. You've been watching Satluj TV's News Hour, and those were a few of today's main stories from around the world. Don't forget you can send us your opinions and thoughts that you may have on any of our news items to our email address, message@satlujtv.com, and we'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, thanks for watching. For Satluj TV News, I'm Angus Scott in London.